All right, terrific. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the music, Jason. I appreciate it. And I know we have a bunch of people that hopped in here at the last minute, so that's terrific too. So thanks for the patience with us getting out the communication with that registration link. We really appreciate that very much. I know that we saw you recently at the July DDOT meetings. I can tell you that I figured we would be doing a webinar fairly soon after that, but I had no idea that it would be the particular topic that we're talking about today. So we have a good chunk of information for you today, and also some resources that we'll be getting in your hands today. So I want to make sure that we go ahead and get into this content, and then the Q&A feature is available. So please go ahead, and I have as usual, a number of staff here that will help answer questions, and then we'll also answer them for the group too as they come in, or as we get to the end of the presentation. So without any further delay here, I'm going to go ahead and get started. This afternoon's session is really an update about the fall 2023 growth assessments. So in other words, the growth assessments that you're administering this fall. And I know that we had initially talked about doing a presentation on a different topic, but this one became pretty pertinent and pretty relevant immediately. So this is the detail that we want to provide you with today. So a main goal of today is to talk about the change that's involved, and a change is a key word here because it is different than what we were communicating even in the month of July. So this is really intended to be a very positive change for students. It's in response to a lot of feedback that Superintendent Coons has heard in her travels across the state and in talking with division leadership. It has become clear that there has been some concern about the growth assessments. And as a result, our agency leadership has directed us in the Student Assessment Office to make some changes with those growth assessments and to have made them immediately for this fall. So we have worked pretty feverishly with Pearson and made some changes, and that's why there was a delay in the opening of the assessment window. And it will start up again on Monday, but there's some differences here that we need to tell you about. Some differences that will make for a better experience, we hope, for students. So what's occurring is that the students are going to be taking assessments this fall that primarily measure the reading and mathematics content in the classroom, from the classroom that they previously attended last year. So in other words, whatever course they were enrolled in last year, we're going to be assessing their content from that class this fall. So for example, and we'll use the 5th grade student as an example, a 5th grader in math this year, so is enrolled as a new 5th grader this fall, is going to be taking a growth assessment that is based primarily on grade 4 mathematics content. Okay, so the point of today's webinar is to get you some details about how this change is going to be implemented and how you will help us with implementing that change at the local level. So again, this represents something very different from what we were doing at this time last year. Last year, we were starting to administer growth assessments to students at the grade level that they were currently enrolled. So that 5th grade student, again, as our example, was going to have received 5th grade content and perhaps experienced some items for which they had never received any instruction whatsoever. So that was some of the feedback that was received. And again, that sort of was the impetus for making this change in the growth assessments. Again, the change is intended to be a positive change. I admit that it's going to be a fair amount of work. A fair amount of work has happened in the last week, and I know that a lot of work is going to happen locally in the coming days to make this a successful transition. But really the change is to ensure that teachers and parents, and even in some cases students, if they see the information or receive the feedback from their teachers and their parents. But we want all of those individuals to have some details about, first, how well the student has mastered the content that they may need in order to be successful in the coming school year. And then also to identify any areas where the student needs additional assistance or some additional support in order to be ready for learning this current school year. So again, that's the change that's coming. I know it was likely unexpected for most of you. It's been, as I said, a fair amount of work has occurred, and I am fully acknowledging that a fair amount of work is still going to occur now that we're handing this change to you folks. So let's talk about the online situation first, because as you know, we administer the growth assessments in online and paper. So for students taking a test online, this part is similar to last year. The testing system will adapt with test questions that are one grade level above or one grade level below the student's previous grade level as appropriate for the student. So the adaptivity of the computer, of the growth assessments is still there for the online tests. It's just going to adapt around the previous grade level of the student. So again, let's go with that fifth grade students as an example. This fall, and again, this is for the student taking an online growth assessment. The test is going to focus primarily on grade 4 content. The system has the ability, however, to adapt down to grade 3 content or up to grade 5 content as appropriate as the student is proceeding through the assessment. Another key piece that I want to indicate here is that TestNav is going to show on the screen in the upper left corner that the student is taking a grade 5 growth computer adaptive test, or CAT is the label that will appear for that student. So the student is going to see that they are enrolled as a 5th grader in a 5th grade test. However, the content that they're going to be receiving in TestNav will focus primarily on 4th grade, so the previous year's content. And then as an additional exception that we'll talk about again probably this afternoon, the online tests for grade 3 and grade 4 reading and math are going to include test items that are mainly based on grade 3 and grade 2 content. Okay, so again, those 3rd graders and 4th graders, they're going to receive test items that start out potentially at grade 2 and grade 3, because remember, we're testing the previous year's content. There is a possibility that if they're doing well, they may see some 4th grade content as well. Okay. And then let's talk about the paper perspective. Okay, so students who need a paper test, and I am aware that some of you already have your paper materials in-house that you ordered them. Some were in transit to you earlier this week. So we're aware that this is going to represent a change for all of you that have paper tests to administer. But looking at that 5th grade student this fall, that student is going to take a paper test with content from grade 4. Now, obviously the paper test is not adaptive, so that's why we're saying that it is specifically grade 4. So when you go to get those materials ready for that student, or when the examiner hands that material or puts that material down at the desk in front of the student, that cover of that test booklet is going to show grade 4, even though that student is a 5th grader this fall. Okay, and the answer document for that test will also be a grade 4 answer document. Okay, and then the difference here that when you have students that are enrolled in grade 3, they're in grade 4, they are both going to be taking the grade 3 paper growth assessment. Okay, so they will see a big 3 on the cover of their test booklets. So I know that you potentially have ordered or prepared orders based on the current grade level of enrollment, because that's what you knew to do. And that's what we thought you were going to be doing. But again, with this change, it means that you'll be needing to likely order some additional materials to get the proper grade levels. Okay, because you'll be administering a test that assesses the student's prior grade level. Okay, so let's get into a few of the details related to this. I want to just do a quick check-in with you and have you think about a grade 7 student who's taking, again, an online fall growth assessment. So my question to you is, on what grade level content will the student be assessed this fall? The student is going to be assessed primarily on grade 6 content with the ability for the testing system or TestNav to adapt to grade 5 or grade 7 content. Okay, and remember, this is an online example. So for which online test should the student be registered this fall? And the answer to that is the student will be assigned or registered for the grade 7 reading growth CAT and the grade 7 mathematics growth CAT. Okay, so with an online growth assessment, the previous year's content is going to automatically be the focal point of that assessment. Okay, so if you have done test assignments or test registrations manually or in the through the upload system, through the import system rather, then those test assignments are going to be fine because you did them based on the grade level of enrollment. And that was some of the work that Pearson scrambled for us in the last week and got these tests realigned as we needed them to be. Okay, so that's what's happening with this grade 7 student. Let's talk about a different example. And let's go to a grade 6 student who's taking paper. So paper this fall. On what grade level content will the student be assessed this fall? The student is going to be assessed on grade 5 content. Again, specifically grade 5 because it's not computer adaptive. And then as far as how you do that registration for the student, okay, in Pearson Access, that student actually needs to be assigned the grade 5 reading and grade 5 mathematics growth test. Okay, so with a paper growth assessment, the previous year's test booklet and answer document are to be provided. This also means that you will need to potentially remove, if you've already done registrations in Pearson Access Next, you will need to remove them and re-add them to the correct grade level. Okay. All right, let's continue on with some of these details here. We wanted to give you an example of what to do for accelerated students. Okay, accelerated students are to be administered the growth assessment that matches the level of instruction that was completed in spring 2023. So for example, a 4th grade student last year was accelerated in math and completed a 5th grade math class in spring of 23. So that student likely took the grade 5 math test, assuming they participated in the assessment and they weren't absent or something along those lines. But they took the grade 5 math SOL test in spring 23. So the student is now a 5th grader in fall 23 and is enrolled in 6th grade math. Okay, the student will take the online fall 23 growth assessment that matches their 5th grade math instruction that was completed in spring 23. So again, we are focusing on the level of instruction that was completed in spring of 23. Okay, so that means that the student should be registered for the online grade 6 mathematics CAT growth assessment. Okay, with an online growth assessment, the previous year's content will automatically be the focal point of assessment. Okay, accelerated students are to be administered the growth assessment that matches the level of instruction completed in spring 23. A different example, 5th grade student accelerated in math this year. Okay, so we're talking about the students accelerated this year. The student will be instructed in grade 6 math this year. The student completed grade 4 math in spring 2023. The student is now a 5th grader this year. They're going to take the online fall 23 growth assessment that matches their 4th grade mathematics instruction completed in spring 23. Okay, that means that the student should be registered for the grade 5 mathematics CAT growth assessment. Because again, that work has happened in the background in the online assessment system. The online growth assessments are set up so that the previous year's content will automatically be the focal point of that assessment. Okay. Right, and then the last example that we wanted to call out specifically is for a retained student. So a student that is retained is the same grade, enrolled in the same grade this year as they were last year. You should be basing that assessment on the course in which they are currently enrolled. In other words, a student who is retained in grade 6 and takes an online growth assessment is going to take the grade 6 reading and mathematics CAT growth assessment. Okay, so the test will primarily focus on grade 5 content. And so as far as the registration, a student who is retained in grade 6 and taking a paper growth assessment, I think you're probably catching this by now. Paper is the one where you have to actually provide them materials that are the previous grade levels content. So that means you're going to have to focus on getting a grade 5 test booklet and answer document, and then also making sure that that test registration is a grade 5 test registration. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some resources that we have developed quickly here that will hopefully be able to assist you. We've got an online version and we've got a paper version of what we're referring to as an information table. Okay, so we're going to talk about each one of these in detail, but basically they're going to assist you with the test registration and the test code question, and then which examiner's manual gets used. Okay, those are the two pieces here that are shifting for you. And I do understand that this likely is going to impact training that you've already done. Those of you that have trained your examiners already, I do understand that this represents some new information that you're going to have to get to those examiners. And of course, the school test coordinators as well. But again, hopefully these documents that we're going to share with you today, I'm going to talk about them today, and we will actually get you the documents today. Hopefully they will be a little bit of an aid for you. Okay, so let's talk about an online information table to start with. So what we've got here is, this is focusing on the test assignments and test codes. So if you look in the left-hand column, this is the course level of enrollment. And then the second column talks about which content the student was assessed last year. Okay, so in the spring, primarily we're talking about. So you can see with grade 3 reading, the student wasn't assessed. We know they weren't assessed with a test last year if they were a second grader last year. So let's go to a more standard example with let's go to the 5th grade example. So the 5th grader likely was in grade 4 last year. So that's what they took the SOL test in. And again, this is an online example. You are going to register that student then for the grade 5 reading growth assessment or the grade 5 mathematics growth assessment. Okay, again, it will show that on the screen for that student, for the online student, that they're taking a grade 5 test. The content that they receive will automatically be geared towards the 4th grade with some adaptivity there to either go down to grade 3 or up to grade 5. Okay, so this table really is designed to help you take a look at, well, or confirm for your thinking really, which courses the student enrolled in, what did they complete last year, and then a confirmation for you about which test I should be registering the student for an online test. And then I'm going to show you a paper version. Okay. One thing of note here, there are no end of course reading or mathematics courses listed on this. So in other words, if you've got a student in grades 3 through 8 that's taking an end of course test, and is participating in perhaps Algebra 1, they won't be taking the growth assessment. Okay. And that's noted at the bottom of this document. I know this document is cut off. I know that it's small for you, but we will get you the full version coming up here this afternoon. Okay, so then let's go to the second part of this information. We've hit what happens in Pearson Access next with the test codes. Let's talk about the manuals. And I think some of you have probably already jumped to this position where you're thinking about the critical part here is I've got a grade 3 student, a grade 4 student. They're going to be taking the grade 3 assessment. They need grade 3 directions read to them. Okay, and in this chart, we have referred you in the current manuals, because remember, the manuals were developed before this change was implemented. So we're giving you, whether you want to call it a crosswalk or an information table, to point those examiners to which particular section in the manual they need to be reading the directions from. So for example, this 4th grade student, they're going to be taking content that is aligned to grade 3. They're going to need the grade 3 test directions. And we've given you the sections here in this document that you need to refer to. We've also given you the specific name of the manual to use, because that's really important when you get to the grade 6 entry on this document. And I think some of you have jumped to that already too. For grade 6, I know that you ordered manuals that were grade 6 through grade 8 for your middle schools. Okay, with this change, you're going to need some elementary manuals for those 6th grade examiners. Okay, so let's walk through that a little bit. So we've got grade 6 down at the bottom of the table. You can see that obviously they're taking the grade 5 reading or grade 5 math growth assessment. They need those grade 5 test directions. So it means a separate test manual that you have to order the grades 3 through 5 test manual, okay, or examiner's manual. And then we've given you the section numbers. Okay, so we know that you'll have to place some additional orders to get some elementary manuals for your middle schools. Again, I'm sorry that this change is ending up with a lot of work on, and in many cases, some rework for you. I do apologize for that. I know that that's not what you were anticipating today when you signed up for this webinar. But we want to get you the information now so that you can place some additional orders to get you the materials you need to be able to implement this change. Okay, so let's take a look at the paper version of this. So the paper version is a little bit different because obviously the way the paper system is working, it is different. We've got the same column on the left-hand side that talks about which test level or which course level the student is enrolled in this fall. And then the second column is familiar in that where was the student assessed? So that's your reference point here. If you have a student that was assessed in grade 5, you can go here to the last spring, you can go to this grade 5 area on the chart. And then it tells you which paper test assignment to add in Pearson Access. And it tells you which paper test booklet and answer document you need. So again, this particular chart is about the test codes, the test booklets, the answer documents. Now, I know that I've been talking about test codes and you're seeing these test codes appear on the screen. The student registration import file requirements document, that's a long title, I know, but that's what it is. The SRI file requirements document, that is still valid. We haven't changed that information. Okay, so we just included the test codes on this document to provide you with a little bit more information to try to make this a little bit more complete. Okay, again, there are some notes here at the bottom of this document that you will get when you receive this table this afternoon. The second part of this is going to address the manuals. And again, we get to the point of needing some different test directions than what you initially thought. Now with paper, remember we're talking about the supplements to the examiner's manuals. So these are not materials that you're ordering. These are materials that are published on the DOE website. So for the supplement to the examiner's manual, we're giving you which one you need and which sections to look at. So let's go again to grade 5. You've got the student taking actually the grade 4 reading test. It's going to have a grade 4 label on the front of that document. You'll see a big 4 on that. You need the grade 3 through 5 growth assessment supplement. And then it tells you the specific sections. The tricky one, or the one that presents the most challenge, is probably the grade 6, because that 6th grader this fall is going to be taking a 5th grade assessment. So they need 5th grade test directions. So that middle school, assuming you have a 6 through 8 type of layout in your middle school, that middle school is going to need the grade 5 or the elementary level directions that are found in the supplement to the examiner's manual. Okay. All right. So again, this is the paper version of the table. We'll provide both of these to you this afternoon so that you have the online and the paper version. Okay, another resource that we'll publish for you so that you have access to it is a set of revised test blueprints. And we are in the process of getting those published this afternoon. If not this afternoon, they will be available to you by tomorrow on the DOE website, the Growth Assessments webpage. Okay, and those blueprints are basically going to be adjusted to show that that 5th grader that is enrolled in math this year, they are going to be getting the majority of their items will be grade 4 content. Okay, so it will show that change, and it will also show the specific standards that are being assessed at that grade level. Okay, so blueprints are coming. All right, so let's talk about some next steps that need to occur. Now that we've hit you with this information, there are some pieces that we want to be very specific about for you as a reminder. And we'll get you I know I keep talking about we'll get you the information table this afternoon. We'll also have these slides for you this afternoon, so you'll have these. The functionality for the growth assessments in Pearson Access Next was, as you know, from an email, I hope you got that email earlier, that we turned it off. We suspended your ability to administer growth assessments this week, as we had initially thought we would be administering growth assessments. We are turning that back on this afternoon. In fact, Tracy Ayler is probably doing it right now. And it should be refreshed and able for you to be able to get back in and do SRIs, to set up your additional orders. The key here is that we wanted you to have this information so that you place correct additional orders, or so that you can adjust your paper student registrations. Okay, because remember, for paper, you're going to set it back a year. Okay, so that's one thing that's coming up. You'll get back into Pearson Access Next. Okay, so let's talk about the additional order piece. Please use the information tables to confirm what you're doing. And again, it's that grade 6 example that requires the 3 through 5 examiner's manual. Okay, and then use that to assist with the paper tests so that you know, and you can just confirm your thinking about which paper test do I need to use for this student and which answer document do I need. Now, keep in mind, you may not have to order if you already have some stock in mind that you had for other students. So it's not a problem to look at what you have in-house if you've already received some materials and figure, what can I repurpose? You don't have to just do a blanket reorder. Use any materials that you've already received and repurpose those to the correct grade level if you can. And then otherwise, you need to place your orders this afternoon and beyond for the correct grade level. Okay. All right. And then as far as online student registrations and test sessions, whether you're doing them manually or whether you're doing them by an import. Keep in mind the online test registrations and test sessions that have been set up in Pearson Access Next, most of them are going to remain the same because that work occurred over the weekend as far as getting these tests aligned to the correct test code for this change. So the DDOT or STC needs to confirm the correct online registrations and test sessions are set for accelerated students. That's a key point where errors can happen. So you'll want to check your test sessions and your registrations. Now, for paper, again, the paper test registrations that have been set up are going to need to be removed and then set up again with the correct test level. Okay, and I don't believe you can edit them. I think they actually have to be removed from the student and then re-added at the correct grade level. So the DDOT or STC, depending on who's going to be doing the bulk of this work, should confirm that the correct paper registrations are set for accelerated students as well. And I should include retained students. So any of your situations that are a little bit different than the traditional examples that we've been through, you want to confirm those. But again, for the paper test registrations, if you've uploaded them already, they need to be removed and then re-added to the correct grade level. Okay. And then the resources that we have available for you. There is a superintendent's memo that's coming. Now, I know we talked at the DDOT meeting that superintendent's memos would be few and far between. Well, this change was significant enough that Dr. Coons wanted it to come out as a superintendent's memo. It's being posted this afternoon. As soon as we have it and know that it is available, we will forward it to you, but it will be on the SUPS memo page. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily help you with the details that we've just gone through, but it may help you with the communication. Because this is all breaking news as of this afternoon. There was a, sorry, folks. There was a Superintendent's Leadership Council meeting this morning where this was initially presented. But your mathematics supervisors have likely not received this information yet. Your English language arts supervisors have likely not received this information yet. So that SUPS memo will hopefully help you convey the details as you need to share this with folks. Principals are not going to be aware of this. So that superintendent's memo, again, may be something that will help you to just get the word out. The presentation slides will be posted this afternoon to the DDOT page. Okay, so give us, a little bit of time after this presentation because I've got to see if there are any changes we need to make, if there are any errors that I've missed. And I say any errors that the team that has been working on this has missed. There have been a large number of people working on this. So again, I need to thank the folks that have put the time in already. And then I need to thank you in advance for the time that I know that you and the STCs and examiners are going to be putting in going forward to make this change. The information tables that I showed you, those will be available on the DDOT page. And then eventually we're going to also get those on the growth assessment webpage. We hope that will be later this afternoon or by tomorrow that they will be available online. So that if someone goes to grab a manual, to download a growth assessment manual, they will hopefully see that information table there. We are recording this presentation. We'll get it posted to the DDOT page as soon as we can. And then in progress right now is we are working on a sample parent communication that we will get to you that you can revise and decide if you want to use it. You can edit away on that one, but we'll give you some base text to at least work from. Okay. All right. And at that point, that's the last of the scripted slides that I have for you. Looking for any questions that have come in. I know that staff has been answering a lot of them. I'm going to ask Jason to help me out with anything that we need to discuss. And then, of course, the contact information here is presented. Please get us your questions. And if there's something that we can do to make this change a little bit more smooth for you, let us know that.
Hey, Sarah. one question that has come up a couple of times, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, um, is how do we know if and what kind of impact this change will have on accreditation or the use of growth assessments and accreditation?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. And the good news with that part is that part will be addressed in the superintendent's memo. And it is not going to have an impact on the calculation of growth. Okay, so this is a change that is being implemented to get better information in the hands of teachers and parents and students. It will not have an impact on the measurement of growth.
Follow-up question, will winter assessments function the same way, or is there more information to come on winter assessments?
Yeah, there is definitely more information to come on those winter growth assessments. We're discussing that now and have some direction from leadership on that. So we'll get you more details as we know on that one. And we will get them to you more quickly than we were able to get you this change.
All right. Next up, and this is can you explain again the why in quotations behind this change?
Sure. Dr. Coons, as she began her tenure here as the superintendent of public instruction, made it a point to talk to division superintendents and principals and a number of stakeholders across the state and the education community. And she received feedback about the growth assessments and concern that we were assessing students on content that they had not received any instruction on. And that's what we did last year. So that fourth grader was receiving test items on fourth grade content that they perhaps had not even received any information about from their teachers yet, because it was starting that school year. So it was primarily to set the students up for an assessment that would provide some actionable information, some usable information for teachers, to let them be aware of what types of areas in reading and math did the student not necessarily strong in from the previous year's content, and they need some additional instruction or some support as you start to go through the school year. So again, it was with the concept of let's try to administer an assessment that's going to get us good, valid, actionable data that can be used when it's in the hands of teachers and parents and even students.
All right. So there is a question asking, since what we are moving to this fall is very similar to what we had in fall of 21, can divisions utilize the reference points that we provided in fall 21 in relationship to these tests that they'll be taking in fall of 23?
Sure. A couple things to consider there, and we'll get you more information about this, but keep in mind in fall 21, we did not have off grade level items at that point. So it was strictly administered on grade level because of the quick turnaround to develop those growth assessments in the first place. So there is a difference a little bit in the assessment that is being administered this fall. We're using the same format in that we are going back to the students' previous year content, but there is the ability to benefit from that computer adaptivity and go above grade level or below grade level. So we need to do a little bit more work on determining how comparable are those results between in those reference points between fall 21 and this with the assessment that we have set up for this year. So we're going to have to get back to you on that. Don't assume that you can use those reference points because it is a little bit different. The blueprints were different.
Let's see. There are a couple questions about if they placed orders that were not yet in transit. Were those orders deleted, or will they need to re-enter those orders?
Yeah, And thanks for that question. There was a handful, well, it was a large handful. I'll say, I think it was in the ballpark of 25 school divisions or 25 orders for various school divisions that had not been packed and shipped yet, or they at least had not gone out the door yet. So we did have Pearson cancel those orders. You'll be able to see in Pearson Access Next under the status of your order. The DDOT can look and see, and it will, I believe it will show as canceled. So we did cancel a few of those. If you have any doubt about whether something is on its way and you're not able to determine that in Pearson Access Next, please call the help desk, the customer support center, and we'll get you some help from Pearson to walk through whether those orders have come out. So they were either canceled or in some cases we rejected them, would be what the status is that appears. Okay.
All right. Let's see. There have been several questions about, and this is off topic, so I'm sorry to go off topic for you. Will there be a follow-up webinar at some point regarding IRW and the changes related to IRW? Yes,
there will be. There will definitely be a webinar, and we will get that scheduled and get that out to you. I know one of the pieces of information that people were really looking for was what are the dates of that test window for integrated reading and writing component of the reading test. And I can tell you that we're looking at April 1st to May 17th as that test window. So I can share that with you today, but we are going to definitely have a webinar that will go through the integrated reading and writing pieces. Okay, so other than confirming that window for that component will be April 1st to May 17th, we'll get you details outside of that.
All right.
And Jason, while you're looking, I'm seeing a question here about the 8th grade assessment and the calculator that's involved with that. So if we're talking about a student that was a 7th grader last year and they're in 8th grade this year, keep in mind that they will be taking that 7th grade assessment. So if we're talking about an online student, that means that if you're familiar with the calculator setup, calculator for an 8th grade test is available for the entire assessment. The 7th grade, there is a calculator. There are calculator active and inactive items. So the calculator gets displayed at different times. So that means that 8th grader will be taking the test at the 7th grade level. We are going to talk with the special education office regarding IEPs and what that means in terms of any addendums or any pieces of information that are needed there. But it is possible to use the PMP calculator for that grade 7 assessment. Okay. And then, so that's where we're talking about the 8th grade test registration, but it will have a calculator like the 7th grade test. Okay.
All right. I think we have several IRW questions if you feel like tackling them, or if you'd rather wait until we have the IRW.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and stop the recording so that we can have that for the growth assessment piece.